Hello, and welcome back to the OTB channel. Do you know, in recent years, the last decade or so, RPM-based distros seem to have taken a backseat to Debian-based and Arch-based distros. And yet there are still some pretty solid RPM-based distros out there that it's worth taking a look at. And today, I'm going to do that by looking at Mageia Linux. It's a distro I've never tried in the 16 years that I've been using Linux. So, first impressions, I'll see you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So I decided this morning, really, I had a few things that I was going to do, but I've had an itch that I've wanted to scratch for a while, nothing health-wise, I'm pleased to say. I've wanted to try a distro called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, it's either Mageia or Mageia. I could go either way. It looks like Mageia to me, but I've just had a look on the internet and some people pronounce it as Mageia. Look, I'll probably swap and change throughout this particular review. I wanted to try it because it's an RPM distro that has really deep roots. Its ancestry heralds from one of the big beasts of the Linux world in the early 2000s, Mandrake Linux. Now, when I started back in 2004, it's quite interesting because most of the big distros were RPM based. So there was OpenSUSE, there was Fedora, there was Mandrake Linux. And Mandrake had built up a reputation for being really user-friendly. Now, I sort of installed it a few times, but I had a few issues. This was back when I was a noob and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was trying to install it on an old K62 machine and it didn't have enough oomph really for Mageia, or sorry, Mandrake. I did install it then perhaps about a year later on newer hardware, and I thought it was pretty good, but I never lived with it. I kind of came the route of using SUSE Linux, SUSE 9 Personal, and then I got caught up with Fedora Core 4, Fedora Core 5, etc., etc., and I pretty soon moved on to Debian-based distros. These days, Debian and Arch-based distros are very much in the ascendant, and the big beasts of yesteryear, the OpenSUSE, the Fedora, seem to have almost taken a back step. And even further behind them, in terms of the perception of many Linux users, is the descendants, really, of Mandrake Linux. I mean, Mandrake, I seem to remember, was a company. It had all sorts of financial problems. Mandrake Linux eventually became Mandriva Linux. That eventually went away. I don't know what happened to it. I think, again, financial issues. And it forked off into a couple of different distros, community-based distros. There was Open Mandriva, which is still going, and there was Mageia, or Mageia. Never tried this distro at all, have absolutely no idea what to expect, but given that it has such a long heritage, and it still seems to have an active community, it's worth looking at. We can become a little bit short-sighted in many ways by following the track of just Debian-based distros and just Arch-based distros, and it can cause us not to see what else the world of Linux has to offer, because it's become huge, and whatever the package manager you use, there's a pretty good chance that the distro is going to be high quality these days, which is good to say. So we'll go over to the Mageia website in a minute and have a look at what I've actually downloaded. I'm going to download, I'll tell you now, the release candidate, which only came out last week. I spotted it on Distro Watch, Mageia 8 or Mageia 8, and I'm going to install that in VirtualBox and boot it up and have a look. I've not done that at this point. All I've done is I've just downloaded it at this moment by torrent. So I don't really know what to expect. I'm not going to look at Plasma, the Plasma desktop itself, because it's the Plasma version that I've downloaded. You've all seen Plasma, and beyond the themes, Plasma is Plasma. What I want to look at is I want to look at the installation process for Mageia, which I believe is different to the norm. And I want to try and look at some of the things that set it apart. I believe it has its own control center, which allows you to do all sorts of admin tasks within a GUI. And I just want to see what makes it unique. So before we do that, let's slip over to the website. So you should be able to see the website here, mageia.org. It's one of those things, I think it's a French distro, this, so I'm not sure how it's pronounced from a French perspective. But from an English perspective, it makes me want to say Mageia, but right or wrong. You can see the website in front of you. It's pretty plain. There's not really a lot about it. Change your perspective, a stable, secure operating system for desktop and server. Free, co-produced by hundreds of people. Non-profit organisation that you can be part of. Okay, fine. And then you get the option there to test Mageia 8 release candidate that is the version that I've downloaded. You've got various links on the website to support, to a wiki, to a documentation centre, and of course to a community. And if we go over to mageia.org, it tells us a little bit about it. So it's a community project, which is always good. It started off from Mandrake Linux in September 2010. So it's got a pretty good track record. You know, we're talking 11 years that it's been out now. And it's had 7 major stable releases. So it's not one of these distros that's released every 6 months. In fact, I'm looking at the last one. June 2019 was the last release of Mageia 7, or Mageia 7. And we're what? In February 2021, we have the release candidate of Mageia 8. So presumably by the time you get to release candidate stage, you're pretty much there. You've gone through the beta stage. It's the last point before you get a release. It's always traditionally been the point with a distro where I will install a release candidate because there are normally only a few final bits and pieces to resolve before the final release. So I consider a release candidate to be safe to use. I would tend not to go for a beta and certainly not for an alpha, but release candidates are fine, which is why I'm looking at this. In terms of the download, well, if you click on the front page, it takes you to this page, download Mageia 8 release candidate, and you can opt for a classic installation, which is an installer. It doesn't boot you into a live environment. You can go for the live media, which is what I did, or you can do a network install. So if you click on the live media, you get the choice here between Plasma, GNOME, or XFCE. I went for the Plasma desktop, 64-bit, and I did a BitTorrent download, which came down in about 5 minutes. So not bad. It was quite big. It was certainly over 3 gigs. But BitTorrent I've always found is the best way to do this. Right, so that's all there really is to say about it looking at the website. So let's get on, let's go and have a look. I'm going to focus on the installation, which I expect to be different. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time going into what's installed by default, how is Plasma themed. It's going to be the differences compared to what I am used to. So let's fire it up and go see. Right, so you should see on the screen now Mageia, the live ISO version 8, the release candidate, booted in VirtualBox. Because I've not used this before, I thought I'd actually take you through the installation because I've not seen it before. So I thought that might be interesting because I believe it uses its own installation process rather than using the standard Calamaris, Ubiquity sort of things that we've become used to. And anyway, what you can see there is the screen that I've got as soon as I booted the ISO, and it's asking me to set my language and what are the options here. Have we got a UK English? Doesn't look like it, so I'll just set the standard English there. I have to accept a license agreement, which seems to be quite a long one. Okay, we're obviously not going to get very far if we don't accept it, so I'm just going to click OK. What's my time zone? It's London. And hardware clock set to UTC. Yeah, that sounds fine to me. UK keyboard. Okay, good. I think just picking English as the standard language was obviously the right choice here, as it seems to have defaulted to UK. I'm going to wait for it to boot into its live interface, and then we'll see if we can do anything about the resolution. Because as you can see the backdrop here to the standard VirtualBox interface. So right, okay, let's see if we can make this full screen and see what happens. Oh, well, that's quite a nice surprise, actually. Okay, so where do I go from here? Click on the live mode to go to the first steps, it says. Right, okay. This allows you to try out Mageia without having to install it or make any changes on your computer. The live media also includes an installer. Do we want to look at the installer documentation? Not at this stage. I'm presuming I can just... Yeah, I can just come out of that and... Right, so what we see here is the Mageia live desktop, and it's clearly in full 1920 by 1080 resolution, which is good to see. I'm impressed at what I see so far. I feel like I don't really know what I'm doing at this stage, as this is a first time for me. So let's get on with the installation and see where we go from here. So we have an icon there to install on hard disk. So let's see what happens. It's a long time since I've seen the old Mandrake installer, and I think this is what this uses. Okay, the wizard's going to help us install the live distribution, so next. Right. What do we want to do? Use the free space or do something custom? Let's keep it simple. Let's just use the free space. I've created a 32 gig virtual hard drive here, so hopefully all good. We've detected that some packages are not needed for your system config, so we'll remove the following packages unless you choose otherwise. Right, let's have a look. Right, that I quite like that. So it's detected that I'm using UK, so it doesn't need all the other languages, and in fact, unused hardware support. Right, various ALSA tools and so on. But okay, anything to save space is a good thing. And it's getting on with removing those packages by the look of it. Doesn't feel quite as simple and straightforward as the likes of Calamaris. That's my first impression. Not to say that it's in any way complicated, but hey-ho. And it looks to me like it's getting on and doing the install. So we'll come back when more interaction is required. Right, so we're a couple of minutes into the installation, and it's taken me onto a bootloader page. What do we want to use? Grub2. Where do we want to install it? Well, yeah, dev SDA. That's the only option we have. Main booting options. Okay, 10 seconds, that's fine. And security. What are we looking for here? Are we looking at boot security or are we looking at user security? I'm not entirely sure here. Let's create a login anyway. I don't know whether this is security to actually boot the system rather than to log into the system. Right, so installation is continuing. And almost immediately I get an option with what boot options do I want to append. I'm going to go with the defaults. Do I want to probe foreign operating systems? I don't, because this is just a single boot system. But if you have Windows on a system or other Linux distros, you'd want to keep that on. I presume that's going to install OS Prober. And I've clicked finish and it's installing the bootloader. And I now have the opportunity to set up online media and to install security updates. Do I want to do that? Well, yes, I do, please. And it's clearly doing a download. I now have the opportunity to download updated packages. Okay, let's continue. I am, by the way, just pausing this in between the sections that don't require me to do anything. Okay, it's telling me what needs to be installed, and I'm just going to click OK. It says it's doing a distribution upgrade, probably because I'm running the release candidate here. Or at least that's what I downloaded. Right, so we're about 8 minutes into the installation. I've stopped and started this recording when my interaction wasn't required. We now seem to be at the stage where we can restart. I've noticed, though, it's not asked me so far to set up user details. It's asked me for a password. I don't know if that's the root password or not. But anyway, I'm going to restart. We'll come back and we'll see what happens from here. Right, so I'm in the process of rebooting. I'm pleased to see it's gone straight to full HD. I've removed the ISO from VirtualBox, so we're booting from the virtual hard drive now. And aha, now it's asking me to set the root password and to enter a user. So I'm not quite sure what that initial password was about, but no doubt we'll find out. So let me set the root password. And let's move down here and create a user, OTB. OTB is my login name as well. And we'll create a password. And icon. If I click on icon, what does it allow me to do? Right, it just changes the colour. We'll go for blue. Bluish. Right, next. And we're now at the login screen. Very different from the setup process that I've been through before, but not difficult, just different. Felt a little bit old school, to be honest, but there's no necessary problem as far as that's concerned. So if I just enter OTB, I'm going into a plasma session and I click OK. And it's starting the plasma session. I have to say that I do like this blue, the theming of it. I know that theming is not a huge thing because it doesn't matter what distro you're using. You can always set up things to look exactly as you want. And that's the reason why I'm not going to focus too much on plasma itself. I'm going to focus on the things that differentiate this particular plasma or distro from other distros. And we can see here that I have a setup screen, a welcome screen, and we'll go through this in a second. I do like the very clean lines, I've got to say. In terms of KDE or Plasma, let's just have a quick look. So we seem to have pretty standard application menu there. Which one is it actually? So if I configured the application menu, okay, it brings this up. Fine. Let's just have a look at what the options are for us. So it's got Firefox, KDE Connect, Conqueror, the KDE bits and pieces there. Okay. Office, it seems to have LibreOffice Writer as well as Kmail. Nothing particularly different there. Digicam, that's a great photograph application. Glad to see the GIMPs there already. GwenView, KColor Chooser, etc., etc. What's in the more? Right, okay, document scanner, Xane, etc. Sound and video, it's got Clementine, Dragon Player, Elisa. Okay, so there's more than enough choice there. Jack audio, visualization, pulse audio control, TV time, television viewer and VLC. Okay, great. System tools here. Spectacle installed by default for snipping. K3B. Not that many people have optical drives anymore, but it used to be the key one that everyone used. An emoji selector. And of course, it's got Dolphin and the HP device manager. And it even has a number of Lexmark tools by the look of it, which are quite unusual to see in a distro out of the box. And your standard accessibility stuff. Databases, it's got LibreOffice Base there. Geography. KDE Marble, I've no idea what that is. KDE Marble and LibreOffice Math. And then it's got a section for documentation. I do like to see documentation in a distro. So if we go to the live installer manual, I'm assuming this is going to open up a web browser, Firefox, and that seems to be what it's doing. Yeah, it's a bit slow there. Oh, that's quite nice. So installation from live media. So select and use the ISOs, boot as a live system, configure time zone clock, partitioning. Right, okay, always welcome these sorts of things. So let me just shut that down. What else was in the documentation? The MCC manual. MCC. Okay. So we'll see what that is. Right, the Mageia Control Center, which I believe is actually on the taskbar there. Right, and it takes you through all the different sections and what you can do. Okay, so big plus point there, a helpful link. Let's have a look at the welcome screen. So click on media sources to go to the first step. Right, so we need to work our way through this by the look of it. So let's go to media sources. So configure your software repositories. So we've got the option of core, which presumably is already enabled, I'm assuming here. Non-free. Okay, so closed source programs such as NVIDIA and some Wi-Fi cards. Tainted, quite a word there. I suppose like GStreamer ugly or GStreamer bad. So audio and video codecs where there may be certain restrictions in certain countries. We've got backport should we want it. And note, if you enable the online repositories during installation, some media sources should be installed already. Okay, well, let's have a look at what we've got then. Right, and I've got to set my root password here, or enter my root password. And here we go, configure media. And let's see what we've got here. So, mirror list, core release. Okay, so then we have the mirror list core updates. So it's enabled. Backport backports isn't enabled, which is probably a good thing. Non-free release, non-free updates. Okay, so there seems to be a pattern here that if we go to this non-free here, the release, yeah, there's no way to select updates there, but obviously on the updates section itself there is. What else is here? Tainted. Let's select Tainted anyway and enable updates to Tainted. Do we need 32-bit packages? I wouldn't have said so at the moment. Clearly, if you want to run a multi-lib system, you would consider doing that. But what I've got so far here, or I think I've got here, is the core updates, the non-free updates, and the Tainted, all enabled. So is there anything else on this list? No, it all seems to be 32-bit, so let me click OK. So I think that's my repositories enabled. Update. Okay, so check for system updates. And again, enter my password. I need to contact a mirror. Okay, and it's finding available packages. And the list of updates is empty. I was hoping it was going to do that because I asked it to do an update when I was doing the installation, so great. Once you've done the installation, you are therefore going to have a fully updated system. That's perhaps why it took a little bit longer than normal, not massively a long time, perhaps about 12 minutes in total to set it up. I've got a decent internet connection here, so it obviously did whatever updates it needed to do. The MCC, the Mageia Control Center. So it contains a range of tools to help you configure your system. Software management, hardware, network and internet, system network sharing, local disks, security and boot. So let's just click on that, and it's asking for the root password. And let's make this full screen. So we seem to have a menu down here for various options. Do you know what strikes me about this, looking at it? It's almost like Yast in OpenSUSE. It has its own configuration software. So install and remove software. I wonder if I just click on that, what we get. So we get a graphical environment. I believe on the command line, it uses URPMI, and this is RPM Drake, which is linked to that. So it's a little bit, I suppose, like Synaptic. So if I click any of these sections, there we go. Graphical Desktops. What do we actually have? Cinnamon, Enlightenment, GNOME, IceWM, KDE, Mate, Window Maker, XFCE, and other. So here's our Compton, and so on and so forth. I just wonder if we search for something like Xmonad, something that not a lot of people will be going for. What comes up in our search results? Not a lot. If I change that to all, I wonder if that make a difference. I would need to play with this clearly. Xmonad? No. How about something simple like OpenBox? Okay, so OpenBox is there. Qtile? No. I'm just thinking BSPWM? No. i3? We've got i3. Okay, so if you like using window managers, this might not be for you. Although I'm not so certain that there won't be other repositories that you can add in order to do that. So configure the updates frequency. So how often do you want it to check? So it's checking every 3 hours here. And how many minutes do you want to check for new releases? Okay. The media sources there we've already done, and a quick click, update your system. We then have, a section about hardware. Browse and configure your hardware, configure 3D effects, set up printers, set up the graphical server. Seems to be set up pretty good as far as I can see. But let's just load it and see what it's asking. Right, so choose an X server. So I'm using a VirtualBox video card, and presumably we just go through. And it's giving me some options there. Let's just click OK. Choose a monitor, plug and play, OK. Set the resolution. Let's keep it as automatic. But I see there that we have some options as well. Just keep it on that. Do you want to test the configuration? Why not? Suppose so. Yes. Unfortunately, I seem to have lost my mouse. So it's going to leave in 1 second. So I'm just going to quit. Keep the changes. Let's say yes. You need to reboot to take effect. Well, I'm not going to reboot now. Set up the keyboard layout. Set up a UPS. Set up a scanner. Okay, all good. Internet. So, wow, a whole range of things. Configure a VPN. Remove a connection. Set up a proxy. It really is like YAS this. Authentication. Add and remove fonts. Manage system services. Let's have a look at that. Ah, that's quite nice. So, you can simply make sure that a particular service starts on boot. And you can start and stop it from this interface. Okay, very nice. So let's just cancel out of there. Open a console as an administrator, a root console, or import Windows documents and settings. I presume that's if you're dual booting with a Windows system. And what about snapshots? You're about to install the following software package on your computer. Drac Snapshot. I'm going to cancel that because I don't know that. That's obviously their own one. Configure Windows, NFS, WebDAV shares. Okay, great. A disk partitioner. System security in a firewall. Let's have a look at what they do for the firewall. I have a feeling this is not going to be UFW. It's going to be their own one. And that would appear to be it. Probably a front end to IP tables. So let me just cancel. And last but not least, the boot manager. Set up auto login to automatically log in. Set up the boot system. Set up the display manager. Really reminds me of YAST. It really does. And I have to say, I'd say exactly the same thing as I say with YAST, that I always found YAST a little bit confusing compared to the standard settings that come in the Plasma or Mate control panel or whatever desktop environment you're using. But if you look through the initial complexity, what it's giving you a chance to do is to set up things graphically that you perhaps would normally set up on the command line. So we then go on to install software. And we have an option here. We've already seen RPM Drake, and I believe that is the default. But you can also set up Mageia to use DNF. And if so, you would need to install DNF Dragora. I don't think we've got it installed by default. No, we haven't. But you could install it from the repository and use DNF as opposed to URPMI. I did see somewhere on the wiki that it says if you're going to use DNF as opposed to URPMI, you should swap your system over as soon as possible after installation. because URPMI and DNF treat orphan packages differently. So it could cause a bit of confusion. You don't want to use both, intermittently. Decide what you're going to use and stick to it. To be honest, either or, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much works for me. What about applications? Oh, right. So what we have here is a small selection of popular applications. So, oh, that's interesting. So do I want to install the Tainted audio codex? Well, I'm going to say yes, simply because in order, if you've got any sort of music or video collection, you normally need those installed. That was very simple, wasn't it? And we could do the same for Tainted video codex. Install. Obviously, the password doesn't last very long. And we click OK. And that's all the GStreamer stuff. Okay. Dead simple. Do we want to install Qubit Torrent, SM Player, the Tainted version of VLC, which no doubt contains more codecs, Mageia themes, extra community-made background images? Let's just click install on that anyway. And that seems to have done it. So that's really quick. So I'm just going to click down here. So games, internet. So it contains things that are already installed and you can launch them from here as well. Okay. It says we can oh no, we can launch the GIMP. It's already installed. I really quite like that for a brand new user to Linux, just working the way through this welcome screen. Although it doesn't look that friendly on first look, it's actually quite useful that it takes you through the process. We then look at your configuration. It tells me we're now running Mageia 8. Now, I know it did a distribution upgrade. As far as I was aware, Mageia 8 hasn't fully been released yet. This is still the release candidate. Although I may well have upgraded to the full Mageia 8 release version already, as far as I know, now that I've just done this. But okay, fine. And then documentation. So forums to the wiki. Okay, so if we go to the wiki, let's just see what's there. Newcomers how-to. Interesting. And the documentation portal for Mageia users. That's really useful. Oh, is it URPME rather than URPMI? I don't know. I really don't know. It's not a package manager I've worked with before. However, if I was going to use this all the time, I would learn a way to, or the way to manage it on the command line as well as using graphical tools. But it seems pretty obvious from what I've seen here that that isn't actually necessary. You don't need to do that. So I really like that welcome screen. I think it's a nice touch. And it feels solid. It feels fast. I don't know about the theming. I do like the wallpaper. What about other wallpaper that might be installed? Okay, we've only got a couple so far, so not massive amounts, but doesn't really matter. They are things that you can always add on. Let's go to the settings, just as a quick look. And I'm just expecting to see the standard settings here for Plasma. So if we look at the Plasma style. Okay, so we're on Breeze. That's the colour scheme. I actually like Breeze Dark. And there we go. That's turned my panel dark. Colours, fonts, icons that we're going to use. So it's using the Breeze, standard Breeze icons. I'm going to set the Breeze Dark icons. And I'm going to leave it at that for the time being. So if I open up what I assume now is going to be Dolphin. Yeah, it is Dolphin. Okay. Do you know, first impressions for me, I like the look and feel of it. It feels very different. And there is something about it, and I can't put my finger on it, which feels quite old school. But maybe that's because it does remind me of Mandrake in many ways, the way that it's configured. But, you know, I think it's got a very nice plasma desktop. It feels quite snappy. It feels well put together. It's different from the norm. Give it a try. See what you think. Let's go and have a chat. Right, so that's Mageia Linux. Mageia Linux? I don't know. So first impressions. It seems solid. I certainly like the way that it looks. It has a very different installation technique. And I mentioned before, it feels old school. I don't know why, but the installation does not feel as polished as we've become used to with other distros. Now, that's not to say that it's difficult. It's not. It's fairly straightforward to accomplish. Installation's pretty quick. I like the fact that the installer actually removes packages that you don't require. So that was a definite plus. And yeah, I like the fact that documentation is available. I like the fact that you can choose URPMI, or you can even go for DNF. Either or. I think the theming's really nice. And it seems a solid, reliable distro that you could easily change to. Would I change to it? No. But that's not to say if I was brand new to Linux, I wouldn't see it as a viable alternative. I won't use it because I'm just so used to using Arch-based distros now. And the downside for me is there didn't seem to be many tiling window managers within the repos. But I'm sure there are community repos and the like that you can add on the top. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. Don't quite know why RPM distros have fallen behind Debian and Arch-based distros in recent years, and perhaps those of us in the community should be doing more just to promote them, to let people know they're still there. They have a long heritage. It's not a brand new distro. It's been around for a long time. It has a very sensible release process. It's not releasing it every 6 months, so you're not going to have to worry about upgrading. Yeah, it was good. Was there anything spectacular about it? Actually, yeah. I really liked the welcome screen. I thought the welcome screen was really impressive. And for a new user to Linux, I think that would be incredibly, useful to have there. But that's pretty much all I want to say about it. So yeah, another distro that I've gone through and had a look at. I wasn't sure what to do today. I had a few options, but I've wanted to look at this distro for a while because it's not one of the top 10 distros out there. I was aware I'm not going to get many views for this video. It's just the way it works, but I wanted to look at it. So I hope you found it interesting. Guys, come and join me on the Facebook group, and I'm all over the place now. I have got a Twitter account, but I don't really use it. I just post once a week. As you probably know, I'm on Reddit. I am on Library, and Library is becoming an increasingly popular platform these days for YouTubers, especially Linux YouTubers. I'm more and more impressed every month as the months go by. I've been on it now for about a year, and yeah, it's shaping up a lot, I think. I should perhaps do a video on that at some point. But anyway, for now, I'd like to just finish by thanking my Patreons. So that's Robert, Gary, Aristotelis, Stormpick Stephen, Mike Long, David Bird, Richard Wade, Ty, Philip, Forrest, Patrick, Glenn, Magnus and Skipper. Thanks, guys. Your support really helps. And that's it for today. Have a great weekend. Cheers.